Hello and welcome back to the review of Death, a Doctor Who podcast, your weekly home for Doctor Who news and reviews. And today we're going to be reviewing the latest episode of Flux, Chapter 3, which is Billy.
Once Upon Time.
And I'm Matt, by the way. Hello.
And yes.
He's Billy.
And I'm Billy. We should say before we kick off,
yeah, we've got some housekeeping.
We've just come off the back of a really cool weekend.
We have at Phantom Events.
Yeah, the lovely people at Phantom had us back to do a live show. We reviewed The Day of the Doctor. That will be available, we're thinking, a fortnight after Flux is done. Yeah. Just to give us a bit of a respite, because, you know, I don't want to see him every week, you know.
I know. I mean, we've basically seen each other every day for the last few days.
I know.
So.
And for the first time ever, we watched Doctor Who together.
Yeah, new Doctor Who. I
thought that's bizarre. We've never done that before.
And at one point, it'll come out in the review when we discuss the story. But
he was going to say he tried to reach over.
I did. Yeah.
Cop a feel. But the first time I ever watched Doctor Who in a group of more than like 6 people as well.
Same, yeah.
Bonkers.
Yeah.
Never again. No, I'm joking.
No. I was actually really pleased.
Yeah, me too.
I thought there was going to be chatter and stuff.
I know.
But I think we're all sad gits, so we were all
Everybody was like,
we must listen, yeah.
So it was a fantastic weekend. Thank you all so much to the people who made the journey to see us.
Yes, we had a really good turnout, I thought. Everyone was really nice. And
it was wonderful. And all the kind words you said about the podcast and all that kind of stuff was absolutely magic. So thank you all so much. And we made a patron out of an individual who came to the show. Did we? We did.
Oh, wow.
So thank you very much, Frank.
Oh, brilliant.
I can't not thank everybody else that we... So James, thank you, James. Thank you, Atlas. Macra, I don't think we actually learnt your real name.
No.
And your... I'll say significant other, could be your sister, I don't know. I don't want to assume anything. But thank you all very much for coming along. Greatly appreciated. And everybody else who said lovely things about the podcast and about the review. So that will be available, that podcast, the review.
But it's audio only.
Yeah, it is audio only.
But it will go out on YouTube, but it will probably just be like waveforms.
A waveform.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and you'll hear...
And maybe I'll just stick a picture of us from the event.
Yeah,
looking like a pair of dickheads.
What more could you ask for?
Yeah, so you'll just have to imagine. It'd be like a telesnap reconstruction. You just think of it like that. So that was really good.
Yeah.
The only other thing is today. What day is it today? What's the date?
15th.
It's the 15th of November, which means Galaxy 4 is out.
Yes.
And it arrived before I left for here.
But you haven't had a chance to watch it?
But I've not watched it, no.
Okay.
So
I've only seen Josh Nares, I think, talking about the set for one of the spaceships and saying it looked weird.
Right, okay.
That's it. But I'm looking forward to watching it because it's a story I have very little opinion on.
Yeah.
You know, it's been years since I last listened/watched it. So I'm looking forward to giving it a go with proper...
Some visuals.
Visuals, yes. Yeah, some visuals.
Yeah. And it's the first Hartnell animation in...
Well, since The Reign of Terror.
No, 10th Planet.
Oh, no. Hang on. 10th Planet, then it was Moonbase.
Then it was Moonbase.
Then it was Reign of Terror before that.
Reign of Terror was the first one that they did. That's why it's so janky.
Why did I say Moonbase? That's
Pat
Trout story. Fake fan. So
it's been a long weekend.
It's been a lot. I'm knackered. The last thing I want to do right now is talk about Doctor Who.
All those non-alcoholic lagers have
they've gone straight to our heads.
Yes.
Do you know what? I was going to get us a 6-pack of non-alcoholic lagers to watch Doctor Who with.
Right.
And the bloody cashier at Tesco in Cabot Circus said, "Can I see some ID?"
Wow.
It literally says 0.0 ABV on the can, and wasn't enough.
That is bonkers. That is like the equivalent of buying a can of Sprite.
I have never been ID'd for a Monster.
Right.
Arguably, that causes more damage to your system than a non-alcoholic lager. That's why there's a stigma about alcohol. Whenever I go into a bar and I say, "Can I have the Heineken 0.0?" They're always like, "You do know that's got..." Yes, that's why I specifically asked for that. So everybody get out there and drink more non-alcoholic lagers because, you know,
that's so bizarre.
It's bonkers.
You do know. Yes. Otherwise, I'd have just said, "I'll have a Heineken."
Yes. Why do you think that Budweiser has prohibition written on the side of it? Because it's got no alcohol in it. Anyway, we could complain about that till we're blue in the face. Instead, we are going to talk about Doctor Who, Flux, Chapter 3, Once Upon Time, until we're green in the face. Because
you're already looking a bit green.
I'm already looking a bit green, you know. But I didn't have a clue what was going on.
Didn't you?
Quite frankly. I mean, I can just about piece it together. I think it's going to need another rewatch to kind of...
Yeah, cement it in.
Cement it, because, when you're watching it and you're just seeing them planet hopping, time hopping, dimension hopping, it's kind of like, I can't follow this thread.
Right.
Now, watching it back, knowing what that conceit is,
yes.
the framework for why they're jumping around and why it's all wibbly, I will definitely be able to focus on it a lot more as a story. Because I feel like with the Flux and with explanations and context and all that kind of stuff with the Flux, I'm constantly having to listen to lines of dialogue.
Yes.
And the speaker system in that room wasn't fantastic.
No.
I was missing lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
From Jodie and explanations about what was going on. But I think I just about got the
there's certain scenes that I definitely want to go back and watch.
Yeah.
And be like, right, okay, what exactly is being said here?
Basically everything in that time storm.
Everything in the time storm, yeah. I mean, I haven't watched it since, and neither of you.
No.
So we're both sort of going into this with hazy memories from yesterday. I did manage to watch maybe like the first 15 minutes before I came here.
Oh, cool.
So I can remember that. Actually, I can't remember that because I was like, how does this start again? And it started with the new character, Belle. Yeah, the Irish girl. So she is... What I liked about that is something that they mentioned, Matt Strevens, I think it was, and possibly Chibnall, said that we've gone quite Marvel this year. And my immediate thought was, oh, so this is like the post-snap thing in Endgame.
I mean, we know there's episode 5 is called Survivors of the Flux.
Yes.
So it's definitely like...
It's all going to tie into that. And I like that. I think that's quite a neat idea to see how is the rest of the universe coping with this huge event.
Yeah, but it's nice, like, it's affected everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I think... Doctor Who, usually it's just, London gets invaded. Yeah. It's nice to see like a universe-shattering event that has actually affected every world.
Yeah. And I also like that the planets aren't just like, they weren't just like, whoosh, they're gone.
No.
There's bits of them hanging in space. Yeah. And, obviously there's perhaps some forms of life still clinging on there, like Belle was.
And then we've got these, what look like kind of antibodies flying around, erasing people that have survived the Flux. Yeah. That ties into a theory, a bit of speculation I've got for something coming up later.
Interesting. My thought was like they're like sort of like the Reapers, aren't they?
Yeah, like removing people from time, removing anomalies and problems.
Healing the wound.
Healing the wounds, exactly. But Belle as a character, like, we don't really know much about their background or, where they've come from. But, I was bang on about Di and Passenger. So I'm going to chuck out 2 crazy theories in this episode. Okay. First one is that Belle and Vinder are the Doctor's parents.
And the baby she's carrying is the timeless child.
The timeless child.
Feck off. I don't want that. I don't want it, Billy.
I know. The reason why is just... I found it odd that Jodie was constantly... I mean... Maybe it's because they got to a point in the writing and realised, well, at no point has Jodie ever been told this guy's name. Yeah. But the fact that she constantly referred to him as that lad, I just kind of thought they're trying to create some sort of a distance between them. Right. And like, I've never met this person. Yeah. Like she said that a couple of times. Yeah. And I thought, is there a reason they're trying to flag that they've not actually had a proper meeting yet?
I just took that as, the Doctor will save anyone.
Yeah.
And put her, because something that I kind of thought, I'm skipping way, way ahead here, so apologies, but something that I thought, oh, this is what's going to happen. All that stuff in the time storm, the Moria, like, if you keep doing this, Doctor, you will be destroyed, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I thought, oh, before she goes into the TARDIS, she's going to have a little tingle of regeneration energy, and that's what's going to kickstart the whole thing off.
I think that definitely could be the thing that kills her off.
Yeah.
Because, they said one last trip. And she actually does make a trip somewhere. We'll get to that later. Yeah. But that doesn't appear to be in the past. It doesn't appear to necessarily be part of her forgotten adventures.
No. And the character recognised her as the Doctor.
As the 13th Doctor. Yeah, exactly. So, that's a whole thing. The Mori as like a race, it was quite nice to actually get them involved in the story. Because I assumed they're this faceless entity that we've heard of in the previous story, and they're the setup for what happens in the next one.
I literally thought they were just going to be set dressing.
Exactly. I never thought they'd get a voice or have any kind of presence in the story. So it was nice to have that. I do feel like we lost a lot of the interest in the Temple of Atropos. Yeah. And all that kind of stuff. I feel like...
Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure what any of that really is. Do you know what I mean? It's still a little unclear. Other than there was obviously something with the Time Lords wanted it, and Swarms
and there's
was
a dirty
trying to
secret.
Yeah. So I guess, is it just that the Time Lords were like, no, this is what we're going to use to control time?
They plundered the planet.
Yeah.
They used the Maori in like a nasty way.
Yeah, because there's this whole thing, isn't there, about the dark. We were set during the Dark Times, so now we know when this is all happening.
Yeah.
Which again, this has just dawned on me, all fits in with everything Sylvester McCoy is talking about, and everything that Lady Painfort talks about when she's saying to the Doctor, I remember the Dark Times and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, holy shit, actually.
He may have dissed it on Open Air, but my God, that Chibnall loves that period in Doctor Who.
He does, doesn't he?
Clearly.
Yeah.
Or he finds that's like a good reservoir for stories about the Doctor's past. And
I'd say again, even though I'm not really into the idea of pre-Doctors per se.
No.
I do. The fanboy part of me does sort of get a little excited tingle in the back of my brain when I'm like, "Ooh, that actually connects. That actually works."
Yeah.
I think really I will keep reserving judgment until the whole arc is completed. It's hard to say yet whether or not I like it.
I'd like to sort of say at this point that with all the kind of retconning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really, we're not to know that the other, let's say the other or whatever, has never actually been acknowledged as being a white-haired First Doctor or a younger First Doctor or whatever.
Right.
We just know that they were the other and that they were there at the formation of Time Lord Society and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So Chibnall adding these Doctors doesn't necessarily contradict anything that we've heard before. I understand that it's a big leap for people to, having known the set structure of Doctors, to crowbar in umpteen incarnations prior to Bill Hartnell. And I understand how that might make people feel a bit like, I've lost that sense of that Doctor learning something on their journey.
Yeah.
But all Doctors, Colin was talking a lot about it at Pandorica, and I want my phone charger back, by the way. He was talking a lot about the sort of it's complete cellular, regeneration of the Doctor. They all go through the same arc. Just because William Hartnell's Doctor has developed doesn't necessarily mean that it shits on everything that may or may not have come before.
And I think the thing is, we almost have to see everything pre-Hartnell almost as a separate character, because as far as Hartnell is concerned, he is the original. He was the little boy that grew up at the academy under Barusa and all that sort of stuff. So all the stuff with Joe Martin and the other Doctors, this is, one would assume, pre-Barusa and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
So that's sort of how I kind of see it. It's like they're the Doctor, but they're a very different Doctor, and they're almost like a different character to an extent.
And that, to me, is okay to delve into that length of the Doctor's history, because I don't want to see young Doctor Who on Gallifrey, with the Master at the Academy. I don't want to see any of that stuff.
No.
I don't mind learning about stuff that we had no clue, about before the Hartnell Doctor, and like ancient Time Lord Society. Actually seems quite interesting to me. You could get really Game of Thrones with it. You could have like a whole mini-series about like the formation of Time Lord Society and stuff. So that, to me, is interesting, and it actually makes the Time Lords interesting. Because the fact that they become these bureaucratic kind of like politicians later on, you think, God, they have really reaped the rewards of all of this conflict and all this crazy stuff that happened in the Dark Times. And it does feel like, the stuff that Lady Painfort talks about in, Silver Nemesis, it's like, there's some shifty stuff going on here, and actually it does, the Doctor is involved in it, and it is a dirty secret of the Doctor's. And they were going to reveal that stuff if the show had gone on into the 90s. That stuff would have been revealed. And, I'm only mentioning this really because when I mentioned the Timeless Child at Pandorica, I scanned the room and it was just like
stony-faced.
Maybe two people in the room were like, "Yeah, I'm up for it." I only bring it up because, we're dealing in something that isn't changing fundamentally what we know about the show from 1963 to 1989.
No.
We're doing all the stuff that came before that, and they've got carte blanche to do whatever they want with it. So to now actually see some of that stuff, I think it just goes to show that it's not harmful.
No.
It's adding something really interesting.
Yeah.
What I do think is quite harmful is when you have Joe Martin coming back and you're supposed to be setting that as like, this is Joe Martin's adventure.
Yeah.
This is the time where Joe Martin was the Doctor. And you have the majority of that scene played out with
by
Jodie.
That really irked me.
I think they needed to, if they'd flipped it and they gave the weighting to the other person, so that it was like 20% Jodie and 80% Joe, no problem with it whatsoever. But the fact that it was almost like toying with the number of glimpses we had.
Yeah.
You know?
It was annoying. I thought, really, as soon as she saw her face in the reflection and it dawned on her, then that was it. We'd be like, okay, so from now on, we should just have the whole thing as Joe.
And for them to have said beforehand, like, we are assuming a certain level of intelligence in the audience, or we're you know, we're trusting them.
Yeah.
I know that that's what's happening.
Well, yeah.
Like, you know, and clearly, you know, that Carvanista weapon. It's like, Dan is clearly Carvanista.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're accepting of that. So I kind of feel like that was them sort of going like, we don't actually trust you to follow along that this is Jodie.
And I think it almost makes it more. Yeah, I think it makes it more confusing when you keep flicking back and forth between them in lines of dialogue. I was just like, well, hang on a minute. You know, come on. Some people at home are going to be really like, why is this happening?
I know.
He's like, just choose one.
This is Doctor Who at that level where people will go, I hate it when Doctor Who does this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How soon did you click about what was going on?
That it was going to be Martin's Doctor appearing?
Because I got it instantly.
Did you?
Soon as I saw them on that little bank, and she was like, but hang on a minute, I saw you. I went, oh, Yaz, Dan and that lot, they're other people, but they're just using their faces.
I must be incredibly slow then.
Because I almost nudged you. I was almost going to go, they're all different. And I thought, oh no, this is a new episode of Doctor Who. He will not appreciate me trying to talk to him.
No. I mean, I wouldn't have minded that in the slightest because I inadvertently ended up spoiling a lot of the story.
Yeah, you did. At
Pandorica, we had like 15 minutes where I just ended up fucking rambling. You know, and I ended up saying maybe there'll be Daleks.
And then the Daleks turned up within like seconds.
And I said, you know, this is daft, but what if Di is the passenger? And then obviously that, you owe me a £5, by the way.
Oh yeah, I actually have my wallet over there. I'll give it to you.
I'm gonna put a bet of 20 on for the two things that I'm gonna drop later. But yeah, I didn't get that straight away, I have to say.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't get it straight away.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really clever idea. Also works COVID-wise, because they're like, well, we don't need to cast extra people and all that sort of stuff.
I would love to know if that was the main thrust of why they did it.
I think it probably was.
Because also I noticed that Jo Martin was green screened for the majority of her appearances. So obviously she wasn't part of that cohort or in that bubble. Are we worried as well that that could be her only appearance in the series? Do you think she'll pop up again later?
I think almost certainly she'll pop up. Yeah. I was
The only thing that makes me say that, to the contrary, is because she was green screened.
Yeah, I wonder if it was just because for that block, maybe they thought, whatever scheduling stuff, they thought, oh, we can't. Fine. If we get you in, then that's going to cock everything up.
Yeah, because the first episode and the last two were in the same block. I think so. Lee Haven Jones stories. I think that's the name of the director. So that would make sense then in that case.
Yeah. And maybe that's why then, in that case, why they kept having Jodie as the predominant face, which is a shame because that could have been really cool of just having Joe as the Doctor for the bulk of the story.
Yeah.
I definitely think she'll turn up. Almost certainly. Did you see the little behind the scenes thing that they put out today?
No.
So they did a little behind the scenes thing, and Joe was there. You know, they were interviewing Joe, and Jodie said something. They were all separate. There's talking heads. Jodie said something like, "Oh, you know, maybe we've not seen the last of her," sort of thing. And Joe Martin was like, "Oh, will I be back again?" And she said something like, "Oh, maybe I should say try getting rid of me," or something like that. And it was like, she's obviously coming back. She's obviously going to be back in the finale or whatever.
I love the fact that she shares people saying, "Oh my god!" Like she's like on Instagram.
Yeah,
she's been sharing videos of people like freaking out in their live reactions of her coming back. I think that's so cool. Like the ownership of like I'm the Doctor, and people are loving it. And because people do, like unabashed. Every single person that has seen the Jo Martin Doctor on screen has no. I don't think anyone's taken to a Doctor Doctor that quickly before.
I know, and when we mentioned...
I think like 3 times.
Yeah, when we mentioned it at Pandorica, everyone was like, when we said, oh, would we like to see Jo Martin come back this series? Everyone was like, yes!
Yes, please.
And I mean, I said to you when we did the review of Fugitive of the Jadoon, I was just like, yeah, in seconds I was like, that's Doctor Who.
Yeah, yeah. I loved having her back, and I'm obviously, you know, it's tied in with the Division. I wonder if, I mean, who do you think the other ones are? So Carvanista is part of the Fugitive Doctor's gang. Are we saying Gat and Lee are the other two?
Yeah, I saw someone do like a composite with their heads on it, and I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Just because Gat, when we see Gat in the story, she's holding that massive gun.
Yeah.
And I know obviously Dan Carvanista has one as well.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting that they gave Yaz, whoever Yaz's equivalent was, the pistol version of that gun, because I kind of feel like they're, you know, who's the only other character we've seen wielding that gun in previous seasons is Gat, you know, and the Fugitive Doctor, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's so cool to actually see a Fugitive Doctor adventure. Yeah. And like that is a universe I want to see, because if the villains are like all like Swarm and Azure and the Passenger, how cool is that?
Yeah. And you got to think like stuff like Daleks don't even exist.
No, in that universe.
Daleks and Cybermen are just, you know.
So you've got carte blanche to come up with a whole run of
great vampire story. Yeah. Oh my god, that'd be amazing. Big Finish, go on it. I know obviously you haven't got the license for it yet, but when you do,
give it 5 years and we'll get 900 box sets and we'll be sick of them by the time they finish.
It'll probably come into play as soon as the centenary finishes. They'll be like, well, you know, it's all gone to Bad Wolf now, so everything is on the table.
But I wonder if the new regime would be of the same line of thinking with Big Finish, because you know Russell kept Big Finish sort of protected from, you know, the licensee kind of situations and all those deals. I wonder if he'll kind of request, can we not do stories like this or stories like that?
Maybe.
And it might be like, you know, if we want to do spin-off material, I might want to do my own Jo Martin story or whatever. So maybe we'll see less Big Finish spin-off box sets going forward. That's something to consider.
Yeah, because obviously we know Russell has a real fondness for a good spin-off.
And if he wants to make it a big empire, like
so he might be more inclined to say, actually, don't do that. Interesting.
The other big bads, obviously, of this story, besides Swarm and Azure and Passenger, were the Weeping Angels.
Old Swarm, wasn't it?
Yeah, Old Swarm, yeah, exactly.
Which was, I didn't think of that, and then when he came up, I was like, oh yeah, of course it's in the past.
It's the other actor.
Yeah.
And cool, I thought, like, there's no chance we're going to see that actor again.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was just enough of a little teaser to hint at maybe what their origins are, if we think that they're somehow related to Time Lords, or they've obviously got the power of regeneration, or some kind of regeneration power. So like the Weeping Angels really were the main villains in this. Yeah. And then kind of get sidelined long enough that when they do come back for the cliffhanger, because when I saw the initial cliffhanger, I thought, I don't know if it obviously doesn't have quite the same emotional weight. You can't really compare it to the one from War of the Sontarans. And similarly for the one for the first story,
those are two very strong
cliffhangers. This is obviously just there to segue us to the next story, which we said on the night looks like it will be the standalone type story. Yeah,
and it looks like a very Doctor Who-y story, doesn't it? It's like a very, even the synopsis.
Everybody in one village disappears on one night. And there's that scarecrow move, and there's Weeping Angels.
And there's a bonkers scientist and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Oh, it's just pure Doctor Who.
Pure Doctor Who. And Claire's back in next week's episode as well. So, I mean, we'll talk about that, obviously, next week. But yeah, I mean, really interesting to have them feature in incremental sort of like portions of the story. Yeah. Really only affecting Yaz. Yeah. Yaz had her own villain to sort of deal with.
So I wonder what that's all about. Why have the Angels got it in for her?
Well, I mean, they seem to have got it in for everybody, but interesting that it's her.
Did they go for Dan?
Well, no, because they're in her phone and they're in her games console. Yeah. So maybe, are they targeting her specifically for some reason? That's an interesting thing. I hadn't noticed actually that might be.
And that was quite interesting when she's like, "This isn't my house." You know, and she's like, "Oh no, your time stream's all muddled." And I was like, "Oh, is this her future? Is this her future post life with the Doctor?"
Well, I mean, nice to see that it looks relatively happy.
Yeah, she's got a nice house.
She's got a nice house. She's got
and a Nintendo Switch.
She's got a Switch. I loved all that stuff with Yaz. I thought it was great. I thought the stuff, you know, in the police car with Jodie talking about the price of Satsumas
that was good fun.
Really funny. She's great at that kind of delivery.
Yeah.
She's really, really funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, the time bending stuff with Dan as well. On a rewatch, I think I'll enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah.
But because it was just so frenetic and it was just bouncing from place to place, that we'll go back to Yaz and that sequence of the Weeping Angels in the car, which I thought was really good. But that bit where Dan and Di are walking through Liverpool and the time of day keeps changing, that whole passage was really, really good.
I just watched that before I came back. Yeah, I mean, I love all that stuff. I'm a sucker for a squiffy episode of anything.
Well, yeah, I mean, your favourite stories are kind of some of the more cerebral ones.
Yeah, like I love Kinder. I do love
Snake
Kinder,
Dance
and I like and all that sort of stuff.
So it's really nice to see Doctor Who do a story like that, and you can see clearly. I mean, people will rip him for it, and I know people have already started to suspect that there are more Pip and Jane related things that will pop up later this year, later this season. But he's clearly a Doctor Who fan of the 80s because, you know, take like a Russell, who may have been more of a fan of the Tom Baker era and the John Pertwee era, or like a Mark Gatiss or whatever. Yeah. Their stories are much more grounded in what a 70s Doctor Who would do. Whereas with Chris Chibnall, I think, you know, they want to play with, like that Christopher H. Bidmead thing, it's a science fiction programme, so you play with the dimensions of the TARDIS. The TARDIS is the most interesting character in the whole thing, you know. And that sciencey, totally alien landscape thing where you think really outside of the box, it is very 80s Who. And so it is nice to see Doctor Who sort of dip into something that's a bit more stylized or a bit more cerebral or whatever. It's nice that it's doing that.
Yeah, I hope we find out more about the TARDIS. Like, I hope we find out. I mean, I hope it isn't just, oh well, you know, time's going a bit weird, so the TARDIS is
it doesn't appear to have actually stopped.
No,
has it?
No.
Or has it by the time?
No, because Vinder's coming through the doors in the floor and stuff when he goes inside. So yeah,
I would like a closer look of the TARDIS in that final scene in that case, because I kind of feel like it's shot to not show you the areas that were compromised or infected or whatever. Because I took it to be, well, as long as the Muri are out of place and that circle is not complete, that's what's making the TARDIS go wibbly.
Maybe it is.
But then obviously they're in situ by the time Vinder goes through the police box doors.
True.
So I mean, maybe I've missed the shot, or I mean, we were watching it on a big screen and I've only seen it once, obviously. Yeah. So I may have missed it, but watching it on a big screen is no excuse for me missing that. If I was watching it on a tiny portable, I may have been excused. And I'm kind of gagging to get to my other big speculatory.
Okay, give us your spec.
Now I know. I even again joked about it when we did the intro, but purple lighting, weird swirly thing in the background of shot. This older woman feeding something. I think this is the Rani's menagerie of creatures. Right. I think that's the Rani.
Nah.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Do you think it's Tecteun?
I think it's Tecteun.
Okay.
I think it's either Tecteun or at a pinch it's the White Guardian, but I think it's Tecteun.
Well, this is something else, because you mentioned...
She's a scientist.
Yeah, exactly. I know. You mentioned the White Guardian before.
Yeah. Someone mentioned the White Guardian and the Black Guardian
at the event. It was somebody in the crowd, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then when she appeared, I was like, oh, she's in white, and she's got like a wicker hat on her back.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of like the White Guardian.
I know, I know. I did kind of think... there's a sketch I've seen on a show before where, you know, football players get interviewed on those backdrops with the sponsor logos and stuff. I think it was the Kevin Bishop show when he used to do that. And he's being interviewed and he walks off and he's got the board attached to his back. Right. Yeah. And he just walks around with it all the time. Yeah. I had a bit of a thing with like that beautiful wicker chair. And the White Guardian just wanders around with it on their back the whole time. But to have the Black Serpent in this story as well, because we've got to talk about Vinder's whole arc as well.
Yeah, because this is where we really learn who he is.
Exactly. And do you think that's... I mean, he's probably not gone for the rest of the series.
No, he's bound to come back.
But that's kind of that arc done.
I think so. I think that's, you know, we know all we need to know. He's got a girlfriend or whatever and an unborn child. That was a terrible line right at the end. So that was a really nice moment. Your as yet unborn baby, or whatever the line was. Like, who talks like that? Just say your baby
odd.
And rub your stomach. You know, we get it.
We get it.
You're up the duff.
We've got it fucking scenes ago.
Yeah, I know,
like,
it was bonkers. It was like, wow.
That was really clunky.
Yeah, there was a few bits of clunky dialogue in this. I can't remember, there was something else earlier on as well in the story. I can't remember what it was.
I've said before, like, I do not relish these performers looking at the script.
Yeah.
And going like, right, it's just exposition.
Yeah.
And it's technical exposition about something that actually doesn't exist. So I've got to make it seem legitimate.
Yeah.
But also it's very explaining, it's very wordy.
Yeah.
I've seen a few people saying that's how you do exposition in Doctor Who with all this stuff. But, you've got a shot of Jodie that lasts for maybe 5 or 6 seconds, and all of it is just stuff, and I can't take that all in.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that needs rewatches. I don't know if that's a failure of it, or it's more that, you can pick up on more things when you watch it back.
Yeah.
Because I got that with the first 2 episodes, kind of on rewatches. I was taking more stuff away from it.
Yeah.
But
especially that first one, because a lot happens in that first episode.
Exactly. But yeah, I just have a feeling that's the Rani.
It's the Rani, do you?
Don't try and find this place. I know who you are.
Yeah.
There was enough of a lightness that if there was other certain lines of dialogue that didn't seem so sort of aggressive, that I would have thought, it's the White Guardian, or it's somebody far more passive. But there seemed to be a bit of a venom in what they were saying, like, don't bother trying to interfere with all this stuff. It seemed a lot.
Maybe
it seemed a lot more aggressive than passive aggressive, sort of like, now, Doctor.
Yeah, we know you. I know who you are, sort of thing.
I know who you are. You're going to try and get involved in all this. Don't bother.
So she also says, this woman, played by, was it Barbara Flynn? Very good actress. I know a lot of people were very pleased to see her in Doctor Who. She also says that the Flux was not a natural event, it was created, and that the Doctor is responsible for it. Kind of like the Big Bang, Steve Moffat. But what do we think that's all about?
I mean, we've already established that there are dirty Time Lord secrets at play. I wonder if, the Doctor discovers something about the universe that they're in, or the Doctor discovers something about time.
Interesting that you say the universe that they're in, because I know, was it last week we discussed, could this be a parallel Earth or something? It got mentioned in a video we did recently. And that got sort of, there was a line about universes. Yeah, there was a specificity about, this universe, and I was like, ooh. This
universe of yours, or something like that. Yeah. I wonder if it's just like the Doctor discovers, much like the moment in The Day of the Doctor, where there's like, this thing cannot exist.
Yeah.
This place is an anomaly.
Yeah.
But it also, if I press this button and start the flux, it wipes everything out, and I don't know what's on the other end of it or whatever.
Yeah.
I do wonder if it's going to be that sort of a moral dilemma.
Yeah.
That morally speaking, this thing cannot exist.
Yeah.
But if I do press this button, you're an even more moral conundrum, because you're still wiping people out, even if they're not supposed to be there or whatever. I wonder if it's going to be something like that, or it's something the Doctor created in the Dark Times.
Oh right,
and it's triggered by the Fugitive Doctor. Just because the Rani, whatever her name was, Wokan, something like that. Was it W-O-K-A-N?
Yeah, it was, because I just thought, wok again.
I know, literally.
He's got a thing for woks.
I thought, could it be something that was set up? That they said it was your doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean the 13th Doctor's doing.
No.
It could have been a pre-Hartnell Doctor.
Yeah.
It could have been a Doctor post-Hartnell that set it all up. Could be Sylv's Doctor that
does something.
Got his grabby little protuberances on some crazy weapon and has decided to detonate it or something. But it answered enough questions for me, this story.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm settled. The Maori were a distraction, ultimately, from the main thread. But it was enough. Okay, I'm hooked into part 3. I want to know about that. Great. It's nice that there's enough through lines that okay, there's enough to get answered in the finale. But also you're getting enough answered in each episode. Like Vinder. Let's talk about Vinder's story arc. I'm glad that's done. We've got the answer.
Yeah.
There's no real sort of deep intricacy to his... But it was compelling enough, the story, and believable enough.
Yeah. So he's not Division, is he? He's just
he's just some Starship pilot.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah. I did notice that Bell seemed to have the same gun and holster as him, though.
Okay.
Or it looked the same anyway. Looked like the same prop. So I wonder if they're from the same agency or something, and she was posted elsewhere. But yeah, I feel like he has a complete arc, and I feel very satisfied with his character. I feel like I get his character.
Yeah.
Great performance. And yeah, I was really satisfied that kind of came to a conclusion for the time being, and we got enough answers. And it wasn't crazy deep into the plot of the Flux.
No.
But,
Do you think we've seen? I think you. Well, I don't know if you did. You ask this earlier. Do you think we've seen the last of the Black Serpent? He's a really good actor, and I'd be kind of disappointed if that was all he had to do. I was expecting.
No, I mean, I don't think so. I think that's it.
You think that's it?
I think that's it.
Yeah. I can't see how he'd come back.
Because there's no link to anything else that's going on in the plot.
Yeah.
And a decent villain.
Yeah.
For considering it was just a lot of posturing and, evil talk and all that kind of stuff.
I like how it's like, seedy underbelly of whatever society they're in, gangsters and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's clearly a reputable... it's like the US government, or the US Space Force, or whatever, that kind of thing. But
they do their dodgy deals.
They do their dodgy black market deals.
And it looked great. It looked really very stylish and
really cool setting. I did think it was hilarious though, because he says switch off the recorder. Yeah. And I don't really want to do switch off the recorder. It's off. I've listened to the recording. But he switched it off after he said switch off the record.
Yeah.
He's edited it as well. Yeah. I was like, okay, right. Cool villain. Cool aesthetic for the space that they were in. Yeah. No interest in really seeing them come back. No. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's it. Yeah. And that's fine. A one-shot baddie doesn't need too much explanation. And I liked Vinder's whole sort of I need to blow the whistle on this, and that lovely bit where it looks like he's resigned himself. I'm going to keep Stum. Yeah, but then he pushes it back. And again, at that point, when we saw Yaz in that space and playing the character, the kind of commander, that's the first time I kind of thought, I wonder if this is being written as like a COVID secure story. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. And what a clever way. If that is the case, it's another example of Doctor Who excelling under pressure. And actually, maybe Doctor Who thrives creatively under pressure.
And interesting that if that is the case, at Phantom, Wendy Pabry was being interviewed, and the Mind Robber came up, and of course the Fraser Hines story of him getting chickenpox, and Hamish Wilson coming in, and that being, I think she said, I remember Derek Sherwin, or whoever it was, script editing at the time, on the floor with pieces of paper and just scribbling furiously, trying to think, how do we work this out? How do we do it? What would we do? And it's such a good
really
idea,
well,
you wouldn't even think. You just think, oh, that was part of the story. You wouldn't think, oh, this was a get around.
Look, I'm sure it's incredibly difficult to make Doctor Who in a year where there isn't a global pandemic and people are, really scared and we don't know this brave new world and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that's really difficult to just make it anyway. But, maybe it plays in as well to the whole thing we're talking about, structure of the series, and that maybe the whole Monster of the Week thing has been au fait for too long. Yeah. And every other TV show has moved on. Yeah. And is doing serialised content, but Doctor Who is still doing Monster of the Week. Yeah. I'm sure during those seasons, again, it's difficult to produce, but maybe it is, when Doctor Who rests on its laurels creatively, it's not challenging itself. Yeah. It's not taking itself to places that they have to work in because of particular restrictions. Yeah. And again, maybe that's just what makes Doctor Who great Doctor Who, because I'd say this is my least favourite of this run's series so far.
Same. And I think that was the general consensus anyway. And that's not to say it was a bad story, because when I got home from Phantom, Johnny was just finishing watching it, and I said, what did you think? He said, I'm a bit confused. He said, I found it a bit confusing. He said, but it wasn't bad. He said, I don't think it was a bad story.
No, I don't think anybody said it was a bad story.
I think some people were really up in arms about how confusing it was, and I didn't think it was that confusing.
It's no more confusing than an entire season of Stephen Moffat.
I think it's only confusing if you're like, right, I really want to unpick all the dialogue in those Swarm and Fugitive Doctor scenes, which is true. You know, there's a lot going on there. Stuff about the Dark Times, stuff about was it like the Founder Wars, or something like that, or something like that. And I know, I think it's Madman in a Box on Twitter. It's got a really good thread about all that stuff and how it all ties into looms and lung barrow and all that sort of stuff, and how it could all work, which was really interesting. And yeah, I mean, unless you're really going into the minutiae of stuff, I didn't think it was that difficult to understand. You know, this was just the kind of like the breather episode, I guess you could call it. You know, it was just like, right, okay, we'll just slow things down. This is let's explain how Swarm knows the Doctor, set up what's going to happen for next week, and off we go. And
that's how I assumed the story would go.
Yeah.
So I was glad that it felt like a refreshing change of pace to slow down, but also it was frenetic in its storytelling.
Yes.
The story it was telling was pretty slow.
Yeah.
But the way it told it was still at the same pace as the other two stories. Which is absolutely the right way to do it, I think.
Yeah, because imagine if this story hadn't been done, say it was COVID that caused why they needed to just use the main actors.
Yeah.
You know, imagine if the story had just been told, okay, right, Joe Martin's suddenly the Doctor, and there's Carvanista, there's Lee, or whatever his name is. You know, it would have been good, but it wouldn't have had that same effect. Like when the reveals come, you know, that's what makes the story. And you go, oh bloody hell, she's that Doctor. Or, oh, that's Carvanista. Isn't that funny that it's Dan of all people that would be Carvanista? You know, if you didn't have that, that's those moments sort of make the story.
I think you're right. And I think the pace of it really complemented it's going to complement the show in the long run.
Yeah.
It's going to complement this season.
Yeah.
It's not one that you can skip.
No.
But also, it's not. It does feel more lean back.
Yeah.
You know, I can watch Jodie rattle off a bunch of technobabble.
Yeah.
And okay, I didn't quite get that, but at the end of the day, it's Doctor Who technical language. Like none of it actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. I did kind of feel a bit like it did feel a bit Sherlocky in that opening sequence where it's kind of like, right,
oh yes,
time slows down.
Yeah.
And that when I liked the fact that we heard the Doctor's thought process. Of like, right, in these situations, I've got no time to kind of work out what's going on, but my brain moves faster than everybody else's. I thought that was really cool. But then
I preferred that to how Stephen Moffat did it in, was it Heaven Sent, when he's like, oh, my mind palace is the console room.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I much prefer, you know, she is in the moment. She's not buggering off to bloody Sherlock land, like you said.
Exactly. And, she's having some transcendental sort of like meditative.
Yeah.
She's going to the third realm or whatever.
Yeah.
But the actual way they get out of that scenario is like, so how did the time storm start?
Yeah.
Like what triggered it?
Yeah.
I mean, again,
is that him? Is that his click? Is that the time storm? I didn't really know what they when they were talking about this time storm. It was a bit like.
And then they met time storm and time force.
Yeah.
Was mentioned, and I kind of did the Doctor somehow channel the time force out of Yaz and create the time storm?
Yeah, and I kept thinking, so is the time force and the time storm a separate thing?
Thank you. I forgot that was what I was going to bring up.
And are they all separate to the time vortex? What is it? You know,
because it's the same purple.
Yeah, this is it.
Effect.
When she was floating around, I was like, oh, so they're in the time vortex. And in the centre of the time storm, oh, okay, Fenric, all right, time storms.
Yeah.
You know. So that was a bit muddly. I think it needed a bit more of it needed to really cement what this actually is.
Yeah.
Because I think in the previous episode, he's like, maybe he sort of said like all of the force of time is going to flow through their bodies.
Yeah.
So maybe that was the time storm. I don't bloody know.
Yeah. But it only would have flown through the bodies of
Yaz and
Vinder.
Yeah.
So,
but because the Doctor jumps on it and buzzes it with a sonic screwdriver, I'm afraid I wasn't there to jump in and go, get that bloody sonic screwdriver out of the way. Did she defer the energy in through her
because she can take it.
Because she could take it, being a Time Lord or whatever she is.
But then
days.
But then Dan wasn't stood on that podium, and he ends up in the Time Storm.
He ends up on the podium.
Swarm,
she pushes. She pushes him
on.
You're
You're right. So,
but that whole sequence is all a bit weird because it's all in her face, and then all of a sudden her foot's moving, and then Dan's on the standing there, and she's doing "I have the power" with a sonic screwdriver, and then they're in green screen world.
Yeah,
and it was a bit like, oh, okay.
One other thing I want to say about Jodie's performance: that last scene. Does every question have to have an explanation or whatever?
Yeah.
Whoa.
She's getting snarky. I love it.
Really arsey with Yaz.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel out of character, and it doesn't feel like it's not a natural progression of the time she snapped at her earlier in the series.
No.
But it does feel like she's going to say something to Yaz in the next 2 episodes, and Yaz is going to go, "That's had enough. You actually have to talk to me now."
Yeah.
Because I do worry slightly that the Doctor's eventual explanation as to why they're keeping things secret, Yaz is just going to go, well, why don't you just tell me that anyway? Because, like, it's not like it means anything to Yaz.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't know what bloody division is, and I don't know what
it's like my
pre-Hartnell Doctors are.
My whole life is a lie. Okay, well, you haven't told me about any of it anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
You could show me a picture of Patrick Troughton and I wouldn't know what the fuck he was.
Exactly. It's not like with a villain. It's not like with a character where one of them has a premonition about them dying.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't tell you because, you know...
Yeah.
It's not like that. So to Yaz, if she finds out the thing about the division and what it means to the Doctor, it's not going to mean anything to her either way. So
it would have been different if it was like Clara who had seen all of the Doctor's faces.
Exactly.
You know, and it was like, well, actually, Clara, I've got another dirty secret.
Yeah.
I looked at your ass when you left the TARDIS that time, when you were in that plaid skirt.
In that too tight a skirt. Oh God. So anything else we want to? Oh, Daleks appearing in it.
Yeah, Dalek. That was a surprise.
That was quite neat.
Yeah, that was cool. They did look a bit janky.
Let's talk about the Cybermen, though.
Yeah, they're a bit lame, aren't they? First thing Jonathan said to me when he came in...
bloody have a Cyberman story where they're not cannon fodder.
Yeah, Jonathan was like, and what the bloody hell is with that girl just shooting those Cybermen? He said they're hopeless.
Interesting that nobody is having a problem with her dodging Cyberman fire.
It's
like, you've all suddenly gone a bit quiet about the secret armour thing. Like, you know, it's just... That whole argument with the Sontaran thing was nonsense anyway, and you all know it. Sorry, Tom. They are the least effective bollocks monster in the entirety of the Doctor Who universe.
I know, it's so sad, you know, they're your favourite monster as well, aren't
Consistently treated
so
like shit.
We both love the Cybermen, and every time it's like, oh.
I know, but like these guys, it feels like they could take more damage.
Yeah. You know, they would get
these
shot
things
at
with
and
bloody
stuff.
spikes and Iron Man armour on them.
Yeah. Someone I think said, you know, it made the ones in Silver Nemesis look strong because, you know, they're getting shot by Nazis and stuff and they're just taking it.
They're being taken out with a bloody sling. I know it's got gold in it. But, you know, it's... Yeah, and also the way that they played that one, you know, sliding off the wall for laughs. Like just to make them look way more ineffective.
Just insult to injury.
Exactly.
And I do find, like, I love the design. I think they look great, and I love the heads. I think because it's a lovely callback.
I'd never noticed before across the brow that kind of rhombus shape that the Earthshock ones have on their...
Oh really?
Yeah, they've got that kind of indent on the brow.
Oh, that's cool.
I only saw it for the first time because it was so close up to the head.
Yeah, it does look like it's a nice fusion of like this 70s or 60s, 70s head with the 80s one. And the mesh in the eyes. It's not like mesh like this. It's like much more intricate. There's a lot going on. I was like, wow, what a cool design that is. You know, something simple that, you know...
I'm sure one of those Cybermen was in attendance at Pandora.
I think they were. Yeah, they were. Yeah. I love them. I love the way that they look when they're static. But as soon as they move...
But it's because they're doing that... marching thing.
I think it's because there's all like plates and body armour, and I think it just sort of slides and clumps around.
Yeah.
And I think this is why a Shard worked so well, is because he's in a silver jumpsuit with like bits on him.
Yeah.
And he's like an older Cyberman. So
the jumpsuit, but you know, the jumpsuit doesn't work for a stompy robotic movement.
No.
In much the same, but that's the only way they can really move aesthetically. When they look like they've got joints, like, you know, like a bit of machinery.
Yeah.
Because it would just go, you know, there's no sort of like every human's got like a slight shake in their hand. But and also, we can't get away from this bloody 2006 voice.
Yeah, that's come back again.
I was a bit gutted,
yeah.
you know, because they didn't sound like that in the Timeless Children.
Did they not? I can't remember what they sounded like.
Essentially, the Cybermen Timeless Children, they have a bit more of a croakier.
Do they?
Sort of like, a bit more like the Nightmare in Silver ones when they first appear. They've got a bit more of a barkier kind of thing like that. Yeah. But yeah, this is straight back to invasion-y 2006 sort of.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it, really, that they can't do something new with the voices.
They just can't nail the Cybermen. The only time that they've, I think, got it anywhere near interesting was with Ashard and with the Mondasian Cybermen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
I think if you're going
to need a refresh,
they do need a refresh
in terms of being on screen. You can change the design 5 times in 10 years, which feels like what they've done.
Yeah.
You know, the Nightmare in Silver ones
didn't last long.
The 2006 ones, you know, they've stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Now I think they need to be fully retired and look to have been fully retired, which is just about right. Mondasian Cybermen, cool throwback. These new ones look great. Not fully sold on the spikes, but I think it's a cool thing. Like, you know, I'd like to see them body check somebody and actually cause some damage with them, because otherwise they're just kind of pointless.
Yeah.
But they're gonna that might be the last time we see those Cybermen on screen.
Yeah.
And we see them get gunned down in one stretch of corridor.
Yeah.
And the other one is lying on the ground relaying all this really important strategic information for
why
no
is
reason.
That? I thought that. I was like, why would this Cyberman be telling me this?
It wouldn't say like it's illogical for me to tell you any of our battle strategies or what we're doing here in this sector. Or, I do like the idea that the Sontarans, the Cybermen and the Daleks are kind of picking off the scraps of the Flux.
Yeah, it's and like, then eventually they're just going to be like, right.
But they'll wipe each other out.
Yeah.
Like maybe survivors of the Flux will be like a 3-way battle. You know, between all the Doctor's greatest villains or those 3 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously the Angels are up to something. They're up to something.
So what do we think they are kind of? Why are they constantly recurring?
I don't know. I mean, obviously they're time related, aren't they? I don't know how. It's a long time since I've watched any of the Angel stories, so my knowledge of Weeping Angels has sort of left me.
Could it be, another mad theory, that they're actually trying to save people, possibly? Because survivors of the Flux, obviously, isn't it, the inference is there that these are people that have managed to get away from the event.
Yeah. And
the whole point of the Angels is that they zap you back in time. They've already reiterated that in the scene with the games console. So maybe they're actually turning up to go, well, we're actually trying to send you back to a point where the Flux can't affect you, because now we've got these blue things that are kind of cleaning things up. And the reason I thought it tied into the Rani was I was thinking of the bees from Time with the Rani. Maybe the Weeping Angels are actually coming in to kind of pluck people out. Maybe they're hunting Yaz down because you know, the Doctor's instructed them to do it, but the Doctor hasn't done it yet.
Well, she said, didn't she? She said there's something wrong with your time stream. So yeah, maybe they're trying to clean up. The debris.
Yeah, and the Doctor's like, I've put you here to cloak you and shield you and help you. And maybe that's kind of what the Angels are trying to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them in the next episode. Like probably not maybe as many as in Time of Angels. Because that was like a planet of them. But,
yeah, exactly.
I'm looking forward to next week's. And that was a really cool sequence, to be fair, when it came out of the telephone. The telephone, my God, out of the mobile phone. And, you know, it was doing all the on the console. That was cool.
That was really well done.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, thank God, we're not like seeing them move like in bloody Time of Angels or whatever. You know, it is still just the, you know, one shot, 2 shot.
There was a bit of an annoying moment, I thought, when it first came out of the telly and the Doctor was like, don't blink, don't take your eyes off it kind of thing. And Yaz immediately turned to her. And like,
she's dead.
I would only assume the Doctor's still looking at it. But there's no shot to indicate that as Yaz turns. So I was like, oh, she's dead then. Like, you know. And I loved that shot as it went round the rotor, and on one side of the rotor it was facing away, and then as it came round, because it was sort of from Dan's POV, it was turning to look at them. It's nice to see them being effective, you know, and not being sort of ruined by that whole, you can see them moving,
Yeah.
Wasn't it like a flash gun or something? Something was like flash, 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 flash in a previous episode, and so you would catch glimpses of it moving, but it kind of moved in that way.
No, there was a sequence. It was the sequence where Amy closes her eyes. She can't open her eyes, can she? For whatever reason, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And they're all around her, and as she like walks past one, it just literally turns its head around like that. And it's like,
I always thought it was something else.
And there is a moment like that, I think, with lights flashing, and they do go ba-jump, 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 ba-jump.
Yeah.
You know, that's all right.
Yeah,
they're not like.
Yeah, they're not literally like fucking. Hey. So I think that's that covered really, then, isn't it? Once upon a time.
We talked Daleks. We talked Cybermen.
Yeah,
we've talked Weeping Angels.
No.
Yeah,
we could talk I guess a little bit about Passenger.
Oh yeah.
And that so Passenger carries the lives or the souls of like millions of people in one, but like a massive hard drive.
Yeah. Because they were using them as hostages, weren't they?
Right, and
so they killed a lot of people.
I mean,
very
a million
quickly.
people in one swipe.
Yeah, and they killed two passengers.
Two passengers.
Yeah.
Does Di get out of there?
Well, yeah, this is the thing. The Doctor's got a lot on her plate.
Yeah.
No wonder she's snapping at people and like, I ain't got time to talk about fucking my cannon.
No.
Yes.
Read Lungbarrow on our trip to the Village of the Angels, all right?
Go on eBay and buy this for 200
£400. And also, tying into Passenger and Di and stuff, Dan's backstory, that he was once married.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well told, you know.
Yeah.
Didn't need to know that stuff,
but
it was enough to continue to make him empathetic and you know, a lovely bloke.
Yeah, it's like, I really loved her. It's like, you've ruined your chances of dying now.
I know,
Don't say that in front of her.
Oh, right, okay, so, you know, he'll be thinking of her, all that sort of stuff. I'm, you know, obviously chuffed that I was right.
Yeah, well done.
But yeah, I guess she must get out at some point.
Yeah, the Doctor's got a lot on. She's like, you know, I'll save you, Vinder. I'll come and get you. We'll save Di. I don't really know who you are, Dan, but we'll save Di, whoever she is. I will find out what the fuck's going on with my backstory.
Yeah.
And I'll save the universe from the Flux and find out what the hell that's all about. And whoever Swarm is. She got a lot on.
That line, I think, is quite telling of where they're at, these villains, in terms of what they want. That whole, we want to reign in hell. It's like, all they want is for the universe to just be nothing, blank slate, and they are the last surviving. And we now know that they're the Ravagers.
So they're the Ravagers.
As told in the trailer. So then when the episode title got leaked for episode 6, I would have thought the Vanquishers was their actual title rather than the Ravagers. And the Ravagers were a separate species we've yet to meet.
Yeah.
So who do we think the Vanquishers are?
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably related to this woman.
Maybe.
White Guardian, Rani, Tectoon.
Or is it the Doctor and company? Are they the Vanquishers? They're going to
Co.
vanquish the enemy.
Vanquish the Ravagers, quite possibly.
Maybe. They've gone from survivors to
vanquishers.
Vanquishers, perhaps.
And we still haven't seen a nude yet.
Still haven't seen a nude. Someone did a thing on Twitter and made a remark saying that the background where the Ood is looks very similar to the background where that lady was, because obviously we don't see the set that they're in, her and the Doctor. It's obviously very purposefully kept out of sight.
Shot.
Yeah, very tight. A two-shot, as Tom would say.
This older lady.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wok lady, whatever her name was.
Wokka.
And someone said, if you look at the Ood shot, this background seems kind of similar.
Okay.
So maybe it's a Ood servant of hers.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Could it be Brian?
Could it be Brian the Ood? Yeah. I forgot about him. Interesting. There's a lot still to unpick, and this whole thing about with Swarm, like, you can't control time. Space will not control time.
Yeah.
Because the Time Lords are creatures of space. Of the fourth dimension. Of the fourth dimension. And the
fact that I like that, the ultimate battle, time versus space.
Yeah.
And it's like, how's no one done that?
Yeah,
or like
yeah,
even as like a tagline for a Doctor Who story, why has nobody gone in with a conceit of space versus time? Because it's always an adventure in space and time. That is such a synonymous, those two things, utterly synonymous with the programme, obviously. But for someone to actually acknowledge it as like, this is the thread, what if you actually pit one against the other? Like, which would come out on top?
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a clever conceit to think that, you know, you've got this creatures from one dimension trying to control another. You know, no one's really ever sort of put the Time Lords like that before.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know the outcome. We know that the Time Lords do control time, and
do we know the outcome in this? Is that in this
yeah,
universe,
this is the thing.
Though,
yeah, this is the thing that this
universe?
chappie on Twitter was saying. You know, it's like, you know, we know that the founding of Time Lord Society is Rassilon and all that sort of stuff, and Tecteun is forgotten about for whatever reason.
Well, it's a brushing under the carpet.
It's a brush under the carpet, yeah.
And this will be a similar thing, won't it?
And he also pointed out that on in the Deadly Assassin at the start, when you've got not Tom's narration, it's when they consult the Eye of Harmony, and he says, "Oh, tell us about Rassilon, tell us about the Eye of Harmony." And it says the Eye of Harmony, blah, 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 in a state, a state of flux,
right,
where nothing will wither or change. And I was like, ooh, was that another thing? Is this all tied in? Is this another clever Chibnall thing? Because he likes his Time Lords and he likes his 70s Tom Baker lore.
He does.
So, who knows?
Who knows?
We'll find out in the coming weeks, I'm sure. But
we will.
Yeah, there's still a lot of questions. Now that we've talked about it, there's still a lot we don't know.
No, but there's absolutely scope for all those to be answered. I don't expect much from next week's story. I don't expect that we'll get much in the way of revelations.
I think that will be like the buffer episode of like, okay, let's just take time away from all of the Flux stuff. I mean, I'm sure obviously it is going to tie into Flux somehow. And obviously that bloke from Liverpool in the tunnels, he popped up, didn't he, as well? So, yeah, let's talk about that. So those tunnels are obviously Williamson's tunnels that they're running around. But he seems to think that they're not on Earth. There was some line of dialogue. Yeah, because he was shooting at something, wasn't he? I thought it was going to be the Cybermen. He was shooting at something, and then those little microby things came fluttering past. And I think Dan said, "Oh, is that what you were shooting at?" And he said, "No." No. So there's something else again that they're obviously keeping secret for some reason. What's that? A tetrap. Because Rani's back. That'd be great. Just wheels around the corner and sticks his tongue out. Tongues Dan. Tongued by a tetrap. Get that fan fiction written, folks. Tongued by a tetrap. What a great story title. That is some erotica, fan erotica that I'm sure someone has already written. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Well, before it gets any... Real. Spunked on by a slither. Right, we'll leave it there, I think. Banged by a bandrel. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, or listening, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Yeah. I'm not just sitting here desperately trying to think of you are. I know, that's why I'm trying to wrap it up before it gets any worse. Next week, we're not sure if it's going to be out in your regularly scheduled time. We're thinking it might be a Wednesday or Thursday release. He's doing Naughty Secret Things. I'm doing Naughty Secret Things. So yeah, we're not sure when that's going to be coming out, but hopefully it will be coming out soon. Yeah, closer to the usual time you would receive your Doctor Who than usual. Your dose of review of death, anyway. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. We will get it to you as fast as humanly possible. We will, and we'll keep you all updated on that stuff. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you all for watching and listening. We'll see you next time for what's it called? Village of the Angels. Village of the Angels. Yeah. Great story title. Yeah. Great story title. Looking forward to it. Bye bye. Ciao.